What happens when Donald Trump interrupts Barack Obama's live town hall, only to be silenced by a single sentence that the whole country can't stop replaying? No one in the audience could have predicted what they were about to witness. It was supposed to be an uneventful Tuesday evening in Phoenix, Arizona, a town hall meant for open dialogue, measured questions, and reassuring answers. Barack Obama sat beneath a canopy of white-hot studio lights, his jacket unbuttoned, his tie loosened with calculated ease, formal enough to command the room, yet relaxed enough to feel human. He was mid-sentence, speaking on the endurance of democracy and the need for unity, when the moderator's earpiece crackled sharply. Cutting through the still air, something in the atmosphere shifted, subtle but unmistakable. "Mr. President," the moderator said hesitantly, his voice trembling as he turned toward the camera, "we've just been informed that President Trump is calling in." The crowd gasped in disbelief. It was unheard of, a sitting president interrupting a live broadcast featuring his predecessor. No one saw it coming. Inside the control booth, producers scrambled, hands flying in panic. Behind the glass, red warning lights blinked like alarms. The moderator blinked, visibly pale, as though he'd just been told there was smoke in the building. Obama didn't move. He leaned back slowly, one hand resting on the armrest, the other brushing his chin, the very image of control. His eyes glinted with quiet amusement. "Put him through," Obama said evenly. His tone carried the unhurried rhythm that millions had missed since 2016. Deliberate, calm, unmistakably presidential. The large screen above the stage flickered to life. Donald Trump's face appeared through a phone feed, his voice booming through the speakers with unrestrained force. "Barack, hot to call in," Trump began, his tone swelling with indignation. "I'm watching this, and it's a disgrace. A total disgrace. You're talking about democracy when under your administration, jobs vanished left and right. Under me, we had the best economy in history. Everybody knows it. Nobody's ever seen anything like it." A few people in the audience exchanged uneasy looks. Some shifted in their seats. Others whispered in disbelief. This wasn't just a surprise interruption. It was a collision of two political eras, clashing live before millions of viewers. Obama stayed quiet. His silence was deliberate, disarming. He turned slightly toward the crowd, allowing the pause to stretch just long enough to make Trump's words echo uncomfortably. Then, with a subtle smile, he said, "Well, looks like we've got company tonight." The audience burst into laughter, short, nervous, but relieving the tension for just a heartbeat. Everyone could feel it coming, the confrontation that would light up the internet within minutes. Trump, sensing attention slipping, doubled down. "People remember how bad it was before me," he barked. "Factories were closing, jobs were gone. China was taking everything. I came in and fixed it. Everyone knows the numbers. Without me, this country would have fallen apart. And now you're here pretending like you accomplished something. You didn't, Barack?" Everyone knows the truth. His tone wasn't persuasive. It was combative, sharp, meant to dominate the room through sheer volume. He was the sitting president, his name stamped across every newsfeed in the country. But as his rant continued, the audience's focus began to shift away from the screen, back to the man seated under the lights. Obama's expression hadn't changed. He folded his hands together, leaned forward slightly, and locked his eyes on the camera. He didn't hurry. He didn't raise his voice. When he spoke, it was with the deliberate calm of a man who had spent years under fire and learned that true power lies in patience. "Mr. President," Obama began, pausing just long enough for the silence to deepen, "I think the American people care less about who yells the loudest, and more about who actually tells them the truth." For a moment, the air crackled. Then came applause, spontaneous, roaring, unstoppable. The moderator exhaled, relief and anxiety mixing on his face. Trump tried to interject again. Louder than before, but the dynamic had already changed. The audience had seen it. The contrast between chaos and composure. One man shouting into the storm, the other calmly standing in it. The night belonged to Obama, and yet that moment was merely the spark. What followed would become one of the most replayed, dissected, and debated live television moments in recent memory. Hours later, far from the bright lights and laughter, the east wing of the White House was heavy with silence. Every footstep from the staff sounded cautious. Every whispered conversation clipped short. The atmosphere itself seemed to hold its breath. Behind a closed door, the First Lady's private office was cloaked in tension. When the door clicked shut, the sound was sharp enough to make a nearby Secret Service agent glance instinctively toward it. Melania and Trump sat behind a dark mahogany desk, motionless but coiled like a spring. A half-empty glass of water rested near her hand, untouched. Before her lay a folder, a leaked DNA report, its pages creased from the pressure of her grip. Her knuckles were white, her hands trembling, not with fear, but fury. For years she had mastered composure. She smiled on cue, spoke rarely, and kept emotion locked behind a polished facade. But tonight the mask cracked. "This," she hissed, voice low and sharp, "is about Barron. I will not let them destroy my son. Do you understand? I don't care what it takes." Her two advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Raymond Hall, a veteran strategist, cleared his throat softly. "First Lady, we can handle this. These things happen. Rumors, leaks. We just need to get ahead of it before what?" She snapped, slamming her palm against the desk. The crack of sound made both advisors flinch. "Before every paper in America prints lies about my family. Before my son becomes a target." Her voice wavered, anger wrapped around the edges of grief. Even Hall, who had weathered countless political fires, was struck silent. This wasn't politics anymore. It was personal, about blood, legacy, and identity. Melania rose abruptly, the chair scraping hard against the marble floor. She began pacing, heels striking with icy rhythm. "I gave everything for this life," she muttered. "I stayed silent. I smiled when I wanted to scream. And this is what I get." Charlotte Winslow, her young aide, spoke carefully. "Ma-am. We're not certain who leaked it yet. But if we trace the source, find them," Melania interrupted coldly. "I don't care how. I want to know who betrayed me." Her tone was flat, chilling. Charlotte scribbled notes, nodding rapidly before slipping out of the room to make calls. Only Hall remained. He hesitated, then said quietly, "We do have options. We can discredit the report, call it fake, tie it to political enemies. Or we stay silent. Let it fade." Melania laughed bitterly. "Fade? Nothing fades in Washington. Everything becomes permanent. They'll use this to destroy my son. And me." For a fleeting moment, the fury left her face, replaced by exhaustion. Her eyes glistened. Then she straightened again, spine rigid. "Prepare statements," she ordered. "But not a single word leaves this room until I say so. Not one sentence." All nodded silently. But he knew the truth. Secrecy in Washington never lasts. The tighter you grip it, the faster it slips away. Somewhere beyond that office, copies of the report were already in other hands. That night, staffers later whispered they'd heard the sound of glass shattering upstairs, a vase, perhaps thrown in anger. No one dared to ask. They didn't need to. Everyone in the White House understood. The First Lady had crossed a threshold she could never step back from. She had always been known for her quiet restraint, for her ability to mask everything behind poise. But this time was different. Word spread quickly, aides calling colleagues, staff exchanging hushed messages. "She's furious," one whispered into a phone in the Eisenhower building. "I've never seen her like this." If anyone thinks she's staying silent, they're wrong. Those whispers became headlines of their own, rippling outward. The story wasn't just the DNA leak anymore. It was Melania's reaction, her fury, her humanity exposed. It proved how deep the cut went. But anger alone couldn't stop what was coming. The next morning, the city awoke under a strange, heavy calm. A sleek motorcade glided quietly down Pennsylvania Avenue, not to award ceremony, but to a discreet law office nestled between two cafes downtown. Inside, no flags, no cameras, no podiums, just tension and the low hum of strategy. Around the polished conference table sat lawyers, crisis experts, and political fixers, all gathered for one purpose: to bury the DNA story. At the head of the table sat Raymond Hall, Melania's most trusted confidant, flanked by two attorneys from a firm that specialized in quiet damage control. Before them lay the folder, the same one from the East Wing, now heavier with implication. No one spoke. Finally, one lawyer broke the silence. "We've got two paths," he said. "Discredit or distract. Deny the authenticity, blame political opponents, or bury it under something bigger. Washington forgets fast when there's a new fire." Hall exhaled. He knew the tactic. It worked, but timing was everything. Too soon looked fake. Too late, and chaos spread. And above all, Melania was watching, furious, humiliated, demanding absolute erasure. Back at the White House, Charlotte Winslow returned with bad news. Every lead she'd followed, a hospital clerk, a data leak, a private contractor, ended in silence. Whoever had leaked the report knew what they were doing. Melania paced the residence, phone pressed to her ear as Hall spoke from downtown. "They think we can bury it," he said. "But it'll take time." "Time we don't have," Melania snapped. "Half of Washington already knows." If Jasmine Crockett gets her hands on this, she stopped mid-sentence, jaw tightening. The mere thought of that outspoken congresswoman wielding such leverage made her pulse quicken. Charlotte entered the room, pad in hand. "Ma'am, there's already chatter in line." "Small accounts for now, but people are starting to ask questions." Melania's expression hardened. "Shut it down." "How?" Charlotte asked quietly. "Call platforms. Call editors. Call whoever you must. I don't care if it takes threats or favors. No one repeats this." The room went silent. Even by Washington standards, this was extreme. Controlling a narrative was one thing. Silencing an entire city was another. Later that evening, Hall reconvened Theckros's team. They ran through every possible scenario. Fake leaks to Meredith Waters, discreet payments, torp orders. Pressure on social media companies to flag the story as misinformation. Each idea carried risk. One advisor leaned forward and spoke in a low, cautious voice. "The real danger isn't the report itself. It's their response. If people see how desperate First Lady is to hide this, they'll lass him the worst. She needs to look calm, composed, above it all." Not angry, not panicked, Hall exhaled slowly. "Easier said than done," he muttered. Meanwhile, word of Melania's fury spread faster than the leak itself. White House staffers talked. Reporters listened. Thefray's explosive outburst began appearing in private texts among journalists, all waiting for Sumia Nebrov enough to print it. In Dallas, Texas reporter Lyle Morgan sat at his desk, staring at an email from a trusted source. Attached was a scanned copy of Foot appeared to be the DNA report. Huant, the only one who had it, but Huas among the few willing to verify it before publishing. He made a call to a congressional staffer he trusted. "Have you heard what's happening in the East Wing?" he asked. The reply was brief. She's panicking. If you've got something, run it. Morgan leaned back, caught between caution and ambition. I've published the story would dominate headlines nationwide. If he hesitated, someone else would beat him to it. While Morgan debated, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was already watching the elopements closely from her Dallas office. She spoke with her aides. Eyes narrowing as she read through forwarded emails and Durley reports. "This isn't just about a family matter," she said calmly. "It's about transparency, about what they hide, and we." Her team exchanged quick glances. They recognized that tone. Crockett had found her opening, but before she could talk, Melania's team was preparing a counter-narrative that would test just how much control the First Lady truly had. Crockett wasn't one to tiptoe around controversy. She had built her reputation on blunt honesty and fearless confrontation. So when word of Barron's DNA leak reached at her desk, she didn't just take note. Shellenden, her staff gathered inside a modest conference room in Dallas. Laptops were open, coffee cups scattered across the table, and a whiteboard filled with names, arrows, and dates. The kind of setup that looked more like a political investigation than a routine meeting. Jasmine stood at the front, hands on her hips, her expression focused. "All right," she began, her voice steady but sharp. "Tell me what we actually know. Skip the noise, just the facts." Harrod, Marcus Bellamy, tall, analytical, and quick with research, switched to the first slide on the projector. The document first appeared in a secure email chain among medical staffers. Someone forwarded it, but we can't confirm who. After that, it spread quickly. At least 3 reporters have copies, but none have published. "Why?" Jasmine asked. "They're scared," Marcus replied. "If they go public, the First Lady's legal team will strike back hard. It's easier for them to stay quiet." Jasmine gave a tight smirk. "Scared? That's not journalism. That's bevisiting power." A few aides chuckled uneasily. They knew this tone. When Jasmine spoke like that, she meant business. Another staffer, Lena Ortiz, chimed in. "We're hearing reports that Melania has been furious, yelling at staff, making threats. Some are calling it her worst breakdown since entering the White House." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Volatile isn't a headline. It's asymptom. If she's reacting like that, it means this leak hits deeper than they want anyone to see. She leaned closer to the table, her voice lower. "And if it's that personal, they'll do anything to suppress it. Which means it's our job to mock. Sure, it doesn't disappear." The team exchanged quick glances. They already knew where this was headed. Jasmine Crockett wasn't one to stand by and watch. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. A journalist Chet Rusted answered, his tone cautious. "Congresswoman, I heard you're looking into the DNA story." "You heard right," she said, pacing as she spoke. "Tell me what to." "No." Off the record, the journalist cessed. "I've seen the document, but I haven't published. It's too risky." "Risky for who?" Jasmine pressed. "You, your paper, or the truth?" Silence, then a sigh. "The First Lady's team is already circling. They'll destroy anyone what touches this." "Then let them try," Jasmine said evenly. "I don't scare easily." She ended the call and turned back to her team. "Here's the plan. We don't go after Barron. He's off limits. The story isn't about him. It's about her. The secrecy, the cover-up, and how far they'll go to protect an image while silencing everyone else." Marcus nodded. "So you're preparing a public statement?" "Not just a statement," Jasmine replied, her tone charged. "We're setting the narrative. We'll talk about what happens when power hides behind walls. The truth doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the people." That night, Jasmine drafted her remarks. Short, direct, impossible to ignore. The next morning, standing outside her Dallas office with microphones crowded around her, she delivered them calmly and clearly. "Seeker is the currency of the powerful," she began. "When documents leak or people speak out, that's not chaos. That's democracy at work. And when those at the top rush to bury the truth, their all question is, what are they afraid of us knowing?" Reporters leaned forward, recording a very word. She never mentioned Barron or Melania by name. But her message wasn't mystical. A journalist called out, "Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying the First Lady's hiding something?" Jasmine met his gaze. "I'm saying this. If the truth makes someone uncomfortable, that's their problem, not the people's." Within hours, the clip went viral. A shat about secrecy and transparency Sigrid online. Cable networks replayed her words, debating whether she'd crossed a line or simply told the truth. Meanwhile, inside the East Wing, Melania's team scrambled to control Thefalau. Hull called an emergency meeting. His foes pale as he showed Melania the video clip. "She's careful, but she's aiming directly at us. She's turning this into a moral argument," he said. Melania's jaw tightened. "Then we fight back harder." But Jasmine wasn't just speaking. She was preparing to show evidence, the kind that would make silence impossible. That morning, the air inside the Rayburn House office building carried unusual tension. Cameras lined the corridors. Reporters competed for position, and staffers whispered in anticipation. Everyone sensed that something significant was about to unfold. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was said to speak at a subcommittee hearing. Buttigieg was clear this wouldn't be an ordinary session. Jasmine entered the chamber with her usual calm stride. Papers in hand, hair expression steady. There were not theatrics and only focus. Every eye followed her, knowing she wasn't just attending a hearing. She was about to shape the conversation in Washington. Across the city, Melania's team watched from screens at the White House Communications office. Hall leaned forward, sweat forming at his temple. "If she brings this up directly, we're in trouble," he muttered. Melania sat rigid, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen. She had been told Jasmine wouldn't mention Barron by name. That was the red line, but they all knew she'dn't have to. The hearing began with routine formalities, but the atmosphere shifted once Jasmine took the microphone. She adjusted it calmly, scanning the room before speaking. "America doesn't just run on laws," she began evenly. "It runs in trust. And when those in power start treating truth as optional, that trusted us a little more every day." Her words cut through the silence. Committee members shifted. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. Jasmine accounted, her tone sharpening. "Time and again, we've seen leaders demand loyalty, demand silence, and expect you to look away when truth becomes inconvenient. But democracy can't function when secrecy becomes standard practice." "The American people deserve a better," a congressman interrupted. "Congresswoman Crockett, we're here today to discuss transparency in government tracks." "Exactly," Jasmine replied. "Meeting high size. Transparency is the issue. Whether it's about contracts, classified material, or private reports hidden to protect political families, the pattern is always the same. Cover it up, silence dissent, and hope no one asks questions." The room filled with murmurs. Everyone understood what she was implying. She had pointed directly toward the White House without naming names. Cameras zoomed in as Jasmine held up a document. Not the DNA report, but atomaline of communications, showing how fast the First Lady's office had tried to suppress the leak. "Within 48 hours, office reports circulating," she said, tapping the paper. Calls were made to media outlets. Editors were pressured, and platforms were urged to silence discussion. If this report was meaningless or false, why rush to bury it? Gasps rippled through the room. It was no longer about Barron. It was about power and control. A reporter called out, breaking decorum. "Congresswoman, are you accusing the First Lady of using her position to suppress information?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "I'm saying this. Truth doesn't need protection. It can stand on its own. If it's real, let the people see it." At the White House, Melania's fist clenched. "She's exploiting this," she said coldly. Hall tried to steady her. "She's framing it as transparency, not family. If we attack, we look defensive." Melania shook her head. "If we stay silent, we look weak." Back in the hearing, Jasmine concluded. Her tone softened but carried weight. Families should be off limits. But when secrecy becomes a shield for power, when anger replaces accountability, we all lose. This isn't about one household. It's about every family that deserves honesty from their leaders. The room erupted in noise. Reporters fired questions. Committee members whispered intensity. By nightfall, the clipways vary. Jasmine quietly gathered her papiers and exited, leaving behind a storm she had crafted with precision. She hadn't needed the DNA report. She had made Melania's reaction the real story. By evening, Jasmine's words dominated the airwaves. The line, "The truth doesn't need bodyguards," scrolled across CNN, MSNBC, and YouTube, THUMBNAILS. At the National Press Club, journalists debated how quickly the story had escalated. Many admitted they'd avoided the DNA angle. It felt too sensitive. But Jasmine had reframed the narrative. She hadn't exposed Barron. She'd exposet's First Lady's response, and that medite printable dot across the country. In diners and homes, people were watching. A woman in Indiana shook her head at the TV. "She's right. If it's nothing, why is the First Lady so angry?" A man nearby muttered, "Because they're always hiding something." The public mood was shifting. It wasn't about whether Thelock was true. It was about perception. And in politics, perception often outweighs fact. Social media only amplified it. Hashtags like #SarTruth or #CoFrup and a Crockett calls it outrended overnight. TikTok clips mix Jasmine's speech with old Trump interviews. Even Instagram memes mock Dath's alleged meltdown inside the White House. Inside the communications office, Hall and Charlotte met late into the night. Staff looked exhausted, eyes glued to screens as Jasmine's speech replayed again. "She didn't even mention Barron," Hall said, rubbing his forehead, "and still turn this into a storm. She's positioned herself as the people's voice and we look like we're hiding." Charlotte hesitated. "We can't just denete without something concrete." Pia Pleer, asking for proof. "Why not release Eth's truth?" Melania entered quietly, the room falling silent. She pointed at the screen. "She thinks she can use me," she said, her tone sharp. "She thinks I'm weak. She doesn't know me." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Jasmine's office was buzzing. National outlets were calling. CNN, MSNBC, even Good Morning America wanted her live. Marcus looked up from his tablet, smiling. "Congresswoman, you're trending in every state. People are calling youth voice of transparency." Approval among independents just jumped 7 points. Jasmine leaned back thoughtfully. "That's good. But we keep it about principle, not gossip. The moment this becomes about Barron, we lose credibility." Lena nodded. "So, what's next?" Another statement, a TV appearance. "Not yet," Jasmine said. "Let 'em chase us. The longer they wait for a response, the more control we hold. But when we do speak again, it must hit nationwide." Across America, people debated the issue in schools, workplaces, and cafes. Some worried about children being dragged into politics. Others were frustrated by constant secrecy. But nearly everyone agreed Jasmine had touched a national nerve. At the White House Hall finally spoke plainly. "If we attack her, we prove her point. But if we stay silent, she owns narrative. We need a third option. Melania's eyes narrowed. Then creation. Outside, cameras rolled, and the conversation showed no sign of fading. Jasmine had struck a chord, and the country was listening. But the First Lady wasn't preparing to back down. She was ready to respond, stronger than Onion expected. By the third day, Melania's silence had come its own headline. Networks ran tickers asking why she hadn't responded, for someone known for composure. Each passing hour appeared as weakness. Inside the East Wing, Melania's team gathered. Heavy curtains blocked the light, and tension filled the room. Hall stood with notes spread across the table while Charlotte sorted press clippings. Melania entered last, wearing a pale suit, her face unreadable. "Tell me, Theplin," she said. Hall cleared his throat. We push back, but carefully. You whoppy her first as a mother, then as First Lady. We frame Crockett as reckless, willing to drag families into politics for personal gain. If we make this about decency, we win. Charlotte added, "We've drafted a short, controlled statement. No direct mention of Crockett, but a reminder that children must remain off limits." Melanie skimmed it and set it down. Not enough, Hall hesitated. If we go harder, it could backfire. Crockett has public sympathy. A strong attack could make U.S. look defensive. Melania leaned forward. "I'm not hiding. I'm protecting. There's a difference. She makes me look desperate. I'll show her strength." The room went silent. Hall knew that tone. When Melania made a decision, there was no changing it. That afternoon, a camera crew arrived quietly at the White House. This wasn't a celebration or a media event. It was Melania's response. Sitting near a sunlit window, she looked directly into the lens. "I've always believed children should be off limits," she said evenly. "What I see now, isham fool. People in power using remorse to attack my family. My son deserves privacy, not spectacle. I will always protect him." The recording was under 2 minutes, but it dominated the news cycle. Supporters called it powerful. Critics said it dodged the issue. In Dallas, Jasmine's team watched together. Marcus broke the silence. "She's doubling down on the family angle. Smart, it makes her harder to criticize." Jasmine crossed her arms. "Maybe, but sympathy doesn't erase the cover-up. That's where we stay focused." The next morning, Melania's counterfence expanded. Friendly outlets began carrying her message, and the political battle entered its next phase.